Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to Let's See Where It Goes. I'm here with some of my brothers here, so I'm just happy to have this conversation. So, can you introduce yourself, man? What's your name and where you from, bro?
My name is James. I'm from Cameroon. I came to the US about 10 years ago. I'm very happy to be here and, to just being part of the conversation. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah. And to my right, what do I have there, man?
I'm Kenji.
Yeah.
I'm from Togo.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in the U.S. You can say that, right? I feel like I haven't seen you boys in a while. But, definitely good to see you guys again. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy
Everyone
New Year,
watching.
everybody. Happy
That'll
New
be
Year,
here.
Happy New Year. So we're here, man. We're gonna just have like great conversation, just like you guys know. Let's see where it goes. So I'm here with my brothers. And one thing that's very interesting though, like in even in the way you guys presented yourself. Cameroon, Togo, and you guys, for those who know, I'm from Congo and naturalized now here. But so my first question is just like, what is what the American experience has been for you guys coming from Africa? Like what the American experience has been for you guys? Just let's start light, some lit, yeah, right there.
I mean, does it matter who goes first, or we just jump in whenever? Well, it's different, right? Uh, the American experience has been it's been interesting because for someone like me, I came here when I was like 12 years old.
Okay.
So I would say I spent the majority of my adult life here,
Oh,
right?
okay,
And I
I
spent
see.
my childhood in Africa. And I'm grateful for the experience that I had in Africa before I came here because when you look at kids that grow up here, right, even though they're African, it's completely different from someone that learned from back home and now that you're here.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like I have that sense of being African,
Huh?
right? And now I'm adding on the American, which just make it which is creating a new like a new person, right? So I just recently went back home to Africa, and I look at my cousin and I look at myself, and I can just tell how we're a little bit different, even though they're just like we're all the same and grew up the same way, grew up on the same experience. I can just tell there's a little bit of difference now that I came to the U.S. and and it's been a great experience so far. 29 years old, I'm about to turn 30. I'm looking forward to the rest of my life, right? You
Yeah.
can say that I'm American because most of my life has been here,
Yes.
but I am grateful for that, being African and coming from
Hey,
Africa.
happy birthday, brother. Happy early birthday, you know what I'm saying?
Amen.
So yeah, before you go, so hearing what you're saying, that I feel like you still have those deep rooted African traits in you, but you feel like at least the American experience kind of changed some things. Like because when you went back to Africa, like yeah, you can relate a little bit with some things, but you still felt the difference of
Right.
things, right?
Right. And I mean, and one of those examples is like when growing up here, you call your elders by their first name, right? Back home is completely different.
Nah,
I
you
mean, I'm
can't,
talking.
bro.
You definitely cannot call your elders by their first name.
Yeah.
Just do simple things, simple mistakes that I was making when I went back. Like, when you're speaking to your elders in here in the U.S., is like you have to look at someone in the face when you're talking to them, or else you're lying.
Yeah.
But back home, you don't stare at someone that's wiser, older than you in their
Yeah.
face, right? You bow down and you take what they have to give, what they have to say, because you know, in a way, it sounds like it's like they know more than you. They've seen life before you.
Yeah.
So you wanna bow down and take whatever they have to say in. So those little mistakes that I have to learn when I went back, being humble, bringing myself down a little bit and listening and watching my cousins do before I do.
You do.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. Love that. Love that. And your brother?
I mean, I think it's a different perspective for me, right? Because like I say, I came here like 10 years ago. I'm over 30s. I don't want to mention my age. I feel like I'm getting way too old for sure. But I mean, I think I spent most of my life in Cameroon. I came back with a great and strong root to my culture, the way of doing things, the way of thinking. My accent kind of remained the same. I do believe so. So it was a great adjustment that had to be done. For me, I always felt like, regardless of the number of opportunities you can have here in the US, life is very stressful, right? Sometimes if you don't take a time, a minute to kind of slow down and um, kind of reflect on what you have done and what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, you can see your life just going by very quickly. I think this is it's just been a big adjustment, but I always try to be remain very authentic to who I am, to where I'm from, and kind of trying to find that right method, that right balance, right, between my cultural background and then the way of thinking, the way the society works. And it's similarly, the way I as a father of two, as a father, the way I do picture situation, the way I raise my kids is going to be very much rooted in my cultural background, the way I've been seeing stuff, the way I was raised, right? And then sometimes it might be tough for my kids because they're seeing otherwise at school. They maybe seeing otherwise in the way the friends might be behaving and maybe the relationship they have with the parents. Again, so that's what I say. For me, it just been a very big adjustment, but it's a learning experience. I've been loving it. I've been loving the time, been spending here, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Wait,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
I mean, James, thank you for sharing there, right?
Yeah.
So I had a question, I had a personal question of mine that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't have a family of my own yet, but God's willing, pretty soon. Um, how important is it to you, right? Both of you are Africans. How important is it to you that your kids have that sense of identity of where they're from, even though they were born here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you don't have a sense of where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. It's very important for me, and I can reflect a little bit and say based on some data, right? I might be wrong about it, but Indian community, for example, have the highest income by family out of many other races and
Immigration.
in the U.S. And this come in my opinion, right? And I may be wrong again. And this come to the fact that they remain very much rooted to the culture, the language, the way of doing stuff. They believe, for example, that a kid should be focusing on that specific type of major when they go into school, right? They're usually pretty strong in calculus, because at home is going to be essentially kind of speaking the natural language, I would say, right? And then focusing in, the parents kind of most of the time remain together and try to instill some type of way of thinking, behavior. So similarly, I do believe, the way I was raised, the way we've been raised in Africa, it's very different from other cultures. I'm not trying to underwhelm, other ways, but I'm very proud of the way I was raised, and when I'm trying to bring that relationship with my kids, the way I'm trying to raise them, I'm going to be very authentic to where I'm coming from, while at times trying to adjust the way the society is moving and kind of remaining very open-minded. That's kind of been my way of doing and the way I've been trying to instill that relationship with my kids and, the way I want them to be, to grow up.
Right.
Yeah, I think I joined James on that. It's like just like he said, to echo a little bit of what he's saying, is like you really need to know where you're from. That really helps you to know where you need to go. Like in two sense, like it helps you to know which path you need to take to be either better than where you're from,
Right.
or which path you need to change. Also, but you gotta know where you're coming from. And I may be biased because I'm an African, but I just feel like African education and way of raising kids, people can see it very strict, but I feel like it's amazing. Like it really helps. And why am I saying that? Because now that I'm an adult, I can look back of certain things that I used to think, oh, my dad was very hard on me on this. Now that I'm an adult, hindsight, I'm like, oh, that really helped me because it shaped the way I started thinking. It helped me to avoid so many things that if I was just led to do whatever I wanted to do, it's like I see some people like, oh no, just allow the kids to discover. It's like, no, that's a kid. They don't know. Like
Right.
they're gonna, if you just allow them, they're gonna try everything and anything. And I'm not saying to be like like just constructive, like don't, but there needs to be like some sense of guidance. So for me, like I'm in the US, both of my kids, they were born here. They're American born kids, but in this house, in my house, the education, it's how I was raised, like stern, strict, trying to teach them something. And just like James said, like, and that's help also. And it shows even when they compare themselves to peers. Like, I'm not asking people to compare, don't go ahead and just compare yourself, live your life. But if you look at the data, like a lot of African, they come here, and they be cruising through school. They be getting like very good grades, like, and people be like, how the people from there, they're not getting all these things. And we had even that talk yesterday with my father-in-law. He was asking a question, but why sometimes it seems like for some Africans, like for a bunch of African, when they come here to school, it's just easy for them. And I'm like, it's the way of the education. Like Africans, they always, even back home, they always strive for excellence. Your dad, even if he has to lie to you that he was always first of the class, he's gonna tell you every day, I was always the first in my class. I was always the best, because they always strive for that. So when you come here, since that been drilled into your head, like a B is not enough for you. 95% is not enough for you. You
Right.
always strive for, you always have that. So you're gonna work hard, because that's what they put into you. And I feel like, yeah, don't lie to your kids. It's not good to lie, but I feel like those things, they helped us to just always strive for the best, always go for the best. So
I mean, I strongly echo what you just said, and then something I just maybe wanted to bring in terms of, because um, I do believe in terms of education, we're doing pretty well, but there are still room of improvement. Something that
yes.
I have noticed with African kids in general is that most of the time they've been lacking confidence, right? Even for most of African coming from Africa, the way we are being educated, kind of having to always put the elders, in a certain, I'm going to say, stance
Standard.
and
Yeah.
standards, makes that yeah, most of the time we lacking that confidence. And I'm saying that because when you get to some corporates and when you get to some level of leadership, or maybe some type of company, you kind of realize that most of the time the promotion doesn't go to the one who works the hardest. The promotion goes to the one who knows how to tell about the way he did his job. And that's something we've been struggling, right? We have stand up every day. I would be seeing people, I've been, leading and not being reflecting properly on their work, but they just been saying so well what about this so little that I have been doing. But that goes through as a big ego. It's a responsibility,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I'm talking about, confidence, and maybe something that we need to improve the way we're educating our kids, just instilling that confidence and be like, hey, you are great, what you're doing is great. And maybe in that sense of saying, oh, just go, this is not enough, right? Sometimes it might be a way of finding that balance and be like, hey,
Yeah.
you're doing great, even though it might not be what you expect, right? But I just wanted to point it out, right? It's good, but it still need improvement. I think there are definitely areas where we can do better, definitely. And then it's our responsibility, right, to identify that as human beings, and maybe taking from other culture. And that's something I really love about the white culture, right? The kids usually have that self-confidence that's very high, right? And something I like about the Asian culture, for example, is that they're usually going to focus on that type of relationship, like we have. But in the way also they raise a kid, the father is going to be very still, right? You're never going to like even you when you hear about those Asian talking, be like, oh, my father never used to tell me I love you, right?
Yeah.
And then the love is going to come from again, we have to be open minded, because we live in a very diverse society.
Yeah.
They're taking what others are doing well to strengthen our education that we're giving to our kids, and that's kind of the only way to remain competitive in our society, and then make sure that our kids are striving. Yeah.
Yeah. Very
I
good
mean,
point.
very very good point, right? And it's great to see the way you guys are thinking. I know every people with their kids, they're very protective. Everybody's doing, trying to figure it out
Yeah.
in life,
Yeah.
and with their kid as well. Um, Personally, recently I just went back and I saw the difference between a kid that's born here, even though you're teaching them, your ways of life, or you're trying to, maybe push up a little bit of the Africanism in them, if I can say that.
Yeah.
But when I go back, right, I speak the language, right? So I feel at home.
Yeah.
I feel at home. It feels great to go back.
Yeah.
But recently, one of my brothers that was born here and a couple of my cousins that were born here, they went back home, and some felt great to be in Africa, to have to be integrated into with the kids, and different culture, different background, people speak different languages, and others didn't, because in a place where you don't know anybody or you don't speak the language, you can communicate. It's kind of hard to live, right? So some went back and they had a great time, just playing with the other kids and having fun, enjoying the countries, and others were crying the whole time because they want to come back, right? So what do you guys think is the solution for that? Do you think one day your kid will possibly himself go live back home, or it's just teach him as much as possible and let him figure it out in life what he wants to do?
I mean, I love this question, and I love the way you structure the question, because it's a very important question, and it does touch in very different aspect, right? And maybe I'm going to start maybe by taking an example. I remember, I don't often talk to Africa, about my kids, but usually there is going to be a perception that the society has about Africa. Oh, sometimes people be like, "Oh, do you often see lion?" But I'm not a.
I saw a lion
if
here
I
at the
say, right? But I remember, with my wife and then the kids, we order food from an African restaurant, and then the kids try the food. They were like, "Oh my gosh, it's so good!
That's
I
great.
need to go to Africa." What I'm trying to say is that it is our responsibility to make sure that we instill the African spirit, the African love, the African, values, so that our kids will want to go at one point.
Yeah.
It's not happening because we're getting into that society that's, just running over us over and over. We are too busy. We just focusing on making money. We're focusing on, oh, this bill is due tomorrow. Oh, this bill is due maybe the day after tomorrow, right? But we also have to take time to talk to our kids about how wonderful Africa is. Talk to our kids about what are the values of Africa, the history of Africa. Retell our story of Africa, right? And something I that always strike me is that when I came here, I went to the school I went to where I got my bachelor degree. In that school, I took a class on Africa studies, and I can swear that I learned so much in Africa in 3 months that I have learned in Africa in 21 years in my own country. Why is that happening? Because even back home, we are not telling the story of Africa. We are telling the story of Africa based on the foreigner view.
Right.
We're looking at the books that have been written by others and then making on that our story. Similarly, the fighter, the heroes of our independence are most of the time seen as Maquisards, for those who know the expression, right?
Yeah.
Because they were just going and hiding and then fighting. If we can value our own heroes, we can expect others to come into that. If we can value our own culture, our own principle, and our own, Africa as a continent. Don't expect the other one to come here. When we were in Africa, we heard about the American dreams. You know, they're selling their culture, they're
Yeah.
selling their society. That doesn't mean it's perfect. When we came here, we clearly had the idea that it wasn't perfect. You have to learn the system, the way it's going, and kind of understand that, hey, you know, there are some realities that we are not being told. You know, the same way we have a lot of African crossing, you know, the ocean to get to Europe. You know, they've been pictured like, you know, maybe 50%, you know, 20% of African are trying to cross, but it's actually less than 5%. It
Yeah.
less, you know, but again, just the way it's being pictured because the story is not being told by Africans. It is important for us to tell our story in our own word.
Yeah.
And that goes everywhere. It goes to religion, it goes to education, it goes to our own histories, valuing our, you know, our heroes, you know, wherever we sing as role models. My you know, role models has been for a very long time Lumumba, right? But the story that I know about him,
He's from my tribe, man.
right? The story that I know about him is just a story that has been told by foreigners.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. We can instill that value and that love of Africa in our kids if we can tell our own story, if we can share our love for Africa in the way that makes sense to them.
Yeah. And just to join, I think also that's one thing that sometimes frustrates me a lot. It's I know a lot of I was a refugee for a long time with my family, and I know a lot of people they did had like they did have like a very hard history or a very hard life coming out from Africa. They had to struggle a lot, and then they get here. And what frustrates me is like I feel like there's not a lot, but like the majority of the people that I meet sometimes from Africa, it's like because they get here and things are a little bit better for them, they dunk on Africa because their life was hard and they start giving like a fake narrative of Africa. And I'm like, okay, bro, you suffered. I understand. I went through like a lot of pain. My country, Congo, has been in war since I was born. Until today, it's one of the most unstable political place in the world because of the resources. There always war, always like a fight inside. But none once I would dunk on Africa. Why? Because like I said, let's put aside all the atrocity that's happening, the wars and everything, right? But I grew up there. Am I bringing something in the society? Am I being a blessing to the people around me? Like just me being me, does that draw people around me? If the answer is yes, then Africa build you like in a way. Africa, like God built you like, but through Africa, through where He allowed you to be born and the people that He put around you, He made you to be that person that people around like and want to gravitate around. So, in a way, Africa made you who you are there, and people appreciate that. So Africa is not it's not wrong. Yes, you went through a hard thing. So people now having thoughts like that, and when you start having kids, you don't even want to take them. You don't even want to allow them to present like that. Start deterring people. So for me, it's like I always had it in my heart. By the grace of God, this year we have to go. But I always had it in my heart. If I'm start having kids elsewhere that is not in Africa, I'm gonna wait the time that they're still very young, but when they can start understanding things, taking them and show them like this is where that comes from. Those are the ground that dads walk on. This is the sand that dad walk on. Like to allow them to see that. I know they're gonna make their own choices, but I have to present Africa because for me it's like, and I'm talking about Africa because I'm African. European, you guys can do the same. Teach your kids where you're from. Americans, teach your kids where you're from.
Exactly.
But I think like you need to be grateful because I'm a very believing person. You guys know already. My faith is big on me. And one thing that I always tell myself, like God doesn't make mistakes. So there's a reason why He made me an African. There's a reason why He allowed me to be born there. And since He doesn't make a mistake, so that was a good thing for me to be born there. So I'm gonna present it as a good thing, like to my kids for them to understand. Now I'm gonna give them, the truth. Okay, be careful here. That maybe can be wrong because, like I said, it's not because I'm African and Africa everything is just amazing. No, there's also some bads. You have to present that, but you gotta you gotta bring your kids to appreciate where you're from.
Yeah, and maybe following on that one, something I always tell myself is that the way African are perceived around the world would never change if we are not able to work together to put Africa where it deserves to be.
Mm.
I think the first thing we have to understand is just, African countries are still very young
Yeah,
democracies,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then something we're struggling with is that for many years, and for maybe too long, we have been in that situation where we have been thinking that maybe something that might be working in a specific society might be working in Africa.
Mm.
It's time, and I'm talking about it because I can, when you read a little bit of the story from China, the way African in general, maybe are being treated at times is very similar to what Chinese went through when they came and then went to California with the Golden Valley, right, looking for gold. But when they were getting that, they never forgot about their country.
Yeah.
They were getting that wealth and at time using that to develop their own country. That's why China it is right now. Today, what is also good with China is that they do wherever there is a good university, you're going to find a very strong community of Asian people. The government financing to make sure that those people get the education they have
Yeah.
and go back to support, right? But again, is I think Africa still need to find the right system. Maybe it's not through democracy, right? Maybe it's through something else. We have been seeing people striving, not through democracy, sometimes through dictatorship, right? Just having a strong leader, but having a vision. If you don't have a leader who has a vision, you can go nowhere,
Yeah, you can.
right? You can go nowhere. And I also feel like Africa need a new set of leaders. I think that age where we have those heroes, who fought for our independence. We have the Lumumba, we have the Koma Kuma from Ghana. We had a lot of those. They all have been killed, and for that amount of time, we had no one. We just been living our country in the hands of old and greedy people with no vision who have been doing what they want and bring the country just low and low. I remember maybe talking a little bit about Cameroon. Disclaimer: I'm not from the opposition, but just talk a little bit about Cameroon. When the current president took the power in 1982, Cameroon was giving donation to China, was giving donation to other countries, but the country has been moving backward.
Yeah.
It is sad,
That's sad,
but it is a reality. But we have believed in letting that guy take over the country for 43 years. And you will find, a little bit like we have seen with Mobutu in Congo, we will find some people, especially that no, we have to remain with him because he has a vision. He had a vision and he couldn't execute that in 43 years. But when it will be gone, those same people will be the one talking about how they couldn't hear it talk, they couldn't hear it. We need new structures. We need new system. We need to go back to our culture, the way we came around. And that gets to a topic I'm very passionate about: colonization, religion. How does that conflict with our own culture, and how the destruction of our culture resulted in a loss in the way the African see himself, because he just doesn't have a background. It's been destroyed,
Yeah. Talking about that, I like we're touching this point. So now, because when we were talking, I'm hearing that okay, there's this sense of pride, not in a negative way, but this sense of African pride that we need to instill in our kids and in the generation to come. Not just our kids, even the people around. Just show them that we are happy and we're proud of who we are as a people and where we were born and all that stuff. But then there should be also a little bit of balance now that we're in this society. Like there's things that we need to pick up, right? Okay, this is right. This is beneficial. Like it's not maybe from my culture, but it's beneficial. I see how that can help me or that can help the next generation, and we can assimilate and all that stuff. So just trying to adjust, like James said, to adjust. But now that's my question, because maybe this is gonna be a point of contention.
Yeah.
I've seen, I'm not gonna cite the countries yet, but maybe during the conversation the names of the countries are going to come or whatever. But I've seen some countries, like on the outside, on the view, we can say like, oh, these countries are, they're African countries, like they are prospering, like they're going forward because they did buy into some of the Western ideas, so that helped the country to kind of evolve and all that stuff. My point of view is like, most of the time these countries, I feel like they've bought way too much into the Western things, which they start accepting things that once was a categoric no from the African, like, culture, for the African people. So do you guys feel the same as I feel like some of the countries are just buying too much into the Western ideology, that maybe financially you can see the financial progress, but the detriment and the destruction of the moral progress?
Okay.
I mean, Africa is a huge place, right? I'm from the West, West Africa. So I wouldn't, if I speak here, I wouldn't speak for people that's on the north or the south or the east, right?
Yeah.
Because I understand that it's a different place. They have different cultures, and they're living different life. But together, we're one as Africans,
Yeah.
right? Learning from others that's not Africans, and learning from the rest of the world is a good thing, right? We should learn. The world has become a place where like everyone is
Connected.
connected through, I guess, the internet now, and you get to see what everyone else is doing, like they're right next to you, right? So learning from others is a very good thing. But I would say, if you're learning, maybe if you're learning to the point that you're forgetting your own, right, or you're learning to the point that you have to suppress others to feel better, then maybe you need to take a step back and look at yourself again, right, and see exactly where you're going. For example, if you go back home, right, one thing that shocks me about living, in Africa is next door you see someone super rich, right?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
house, stories, couple stories house, and then right underneath them you see like
Shack.
a shack, somebody barely making it,
Yeah.
right? So this question really comes to mind. I'm like, how can you wake up on that three tall story and look down to the person that can barely afford any food? It's sad. It's a little bit sad,
Yeah.
right? But if you're a conscious person, if you get the opportunity to be able to, help, I say help as much as possible. Learning from the worst of the world, or maybe coming here, earning money, and going back home to be able to help. Those are good things that many people are doing. But if you're learning to the point that it's becoming greedy, and you're not able to help others, or maybe lose your sense of identity of where you come from, maybe like I said, it might be time for certain people to take a step back and look at the African values and offer of that. There's good, there's bad, but Africa has a very rich culture, and I would say majority is good, right? And it doesn't suppress, and it does have that sense of family and unity. That's one thing that we do need to go back to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I see stuff a little bit differently, right? I just do believe that many countries in Africa have lost the culture, right? They kind of lost the background, and that was plain, right? And then maybe I'm going to get into a very controversial topic.
Go there.
right?
Go there.
But looking at maybe the time of slavery, and how religion, for example, have been used. The Bible has been used as as an instrument, right, to foster slavery, right? And then during the time of colonization, what we have seen from the colonizer standpoint has been an effort and a directed effort to remove any time of background connection. You know, there also being situation where brilliant minds have been um, removed from the society, and that kind of goes back to a specific situation back in Cameroon as well. I can take example of Cameroon where in the west part of Cameroon at one point, um, what the French colonizer have done was bringing together the brightest mind of a specific village and burning them down,
Oh
right,
wow.
in front of everyone, right? So that there has been that sense of destroying what was African, right? And that has been used through different instruments, right? Now again, it is very important. That's why when I see a country like I think it's Nigeria with the I forgot the name of that captain who overthrew a long time I think
Government.
government, and then it kind of have decided to make action toward going back to what's valuable, promoting African industries, and promoting African culture. This is where it starts. Again, it's very important that we understand we are a very young, nation. Most of us got our independence during the 1960s. Cameroon got its independence 1960s, right? So it is a process, but we have to understand that the process starts by understanding where you're coming from, valuing your story, telling your story. It's very important for me, right? Telling your story, even if you believe in something, right? Believe in something without in anyhow, right? Rejecting what you know your cultural background might look like. And this is something again, for example, right, where I've been very much conflicted lately, where for example, the Bible, and again, the Bible is a book that can be very much open to interpretation, right? And when I remember, I also took a class, and I remember during the conversation, people were saying, you will understand the Bible in the way that makes sense to your background, right? So I will maybe push a little bit further there, maybe later. But again, it's just been that sense where many years, African has been taught that your way of doing is wrong. You gotta stop. Right? Your way of acting, your way of eating, your way of walking, your way of thinking is wrong. You gotta stop. The same way I believe you cannot have development, and you won't see anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong again, but you won't see anywhere a single country in the world that achieved development if they didn't have the, um, if they didn't manage to get their own currency. It doesn't make sense. It won't happen. I worked a little bit on Congo, back when I was in Cameroon. I think I was my first year, maybe beginning, maybe at high school or something. I'm not really sure. And something that I learned and that really struck me is just how wealthy a country can be at the same time be at the bottom.
Yep.
But why is that? Because you have so many forces, acting toward against the betterment of the people of Congo. Because they understand at the same time, if they can gather, and I kind of go back to a little bit the way Africa was divided. It wasn't divided in the way that makes sense for African, in terms of tribe, in terms of culture. It was divided in a way that makes sense to the foreigner, to the people that were in the table in Germany, cutting Africa like a cake. They didn't take in consideration the culture. So many times, even when the African wants to move forward, there is going to be an issue of tribe. Oh, if you gather with those people and they get in power, they may destroy us. They may go after us. That's what happened in Rwanda, right? And through the instrumentalization of, again, external forces, right? That's why it's so difficult, for in my opinion, that for African to kind of find that end of the tunnel, because we're still struggling with the basics, the basic of where you're coming from, what you're doing, what you're believing in, and kind of accepting at the same time the world is evolving. You have to adjust. You have to be open-minded, And as long as we can find that balance, and having a leadership that makes sense, the leadership that has a vision for African, having a mindset that's adjusted for development as well, we won't go nowhere. And I think, just answering your question, I think it just goes back to all that, right? Beyond saying that this one might be wealthy, this one might be poor. We are in a competitive society. We have to compete. What I mean by having to compete is just, instead of focusing time in, I don't know, making video on the street dancing, focus time on learning. I don't know, that's just my mindset, right? Focus time in learning how to, maybe compete with the Chinese kids who's over there focusing on how to maybe build a house. Focus time on, maybe competing, I don't know, maybe with, a Westerner, maybe a European who's over there, maybe learning philosophy. I don't know, right? We have to compete. We have to compete with each other. Like someone says, there are no relationship in between nation, right? It's only about interest. What do I gain from you? We have to stop in that mindset that, that country is so nice. They're giving us money. They're going to come and build school. What are they gaining from that? You also have to understand, as a nation, if they're doing X, they don't want to waste money where they're not going to get anything. Why are we still in that mindset? Oh, please help us. If they're helping, they're getting something. If I'm helping you, I'm getting something. You have even here, a lot of those wealthy people having foundation. Then because they don't have nothing to do with the money, it's all about taxes. I'm taking my money, I'm putting that over there, and then the way I'm claiming my taxes, I'm going to get it back. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them. Again, that's what I'm talking about, mindset. That's what I'm talking about, leadership, failing us. And that's also I'm talking about, being able to find where we're coming from. How do we relate to our culture? How do we become African again? How do we build that African pride? And then going from there, all nations, I think, have been going through the same process. China has, India has, and so on. That's just my point about that.
Woo! That was a lot of informations.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, so some good stuff to take in. And so